Not so short exercise 7-5, posting from sales journal. So in the previous problem, we entered the transactions into the sales journal. So remember, the only thing that goes into the sales journal are sales on account. But we don't need this image open because it's also right behind here. It does, however, come in handy later in the problem. Now, the reason we need to post to the ledger is because what if Brooke here calls us up and says, I want to pay off how much I owe you? Well, you can't assume that it's just this is the only AR that she owes to us. So we would need to go to the subledger, also called the subsidiary ledger, technically the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger, and find out how much Brooke owes us. But before we can post, what we need to do is total each column in the sales journal. So we're going to add up all of these in this column for the accounts receivable and sales revenue. So the sales amount, that is going to be a total of 4,580. And then for our cost of goods sold and merchandise inventory journal entries, that is going to be 3,440. Let's go ahead and check our answer. Good job. So if we scroll back up for a second, so what this means is the goods, the inventory that we sold, cost us $3,440. However, we sold it for $4,580. And that is not a huge markup. So now for requirement 2, the following 4 column accounts in the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger have been opened for you. We have accounts receivable Ferris, then we have accounts receivable Jenica, accounts receivable Torres, and accounts receivable Whitley. So all of those, but we have to post the transactions to the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger. If an input field is not used in the ledger, leave the field empty. Do not select any information and do not enter A0. Enter the transactions in chronological order in the next available row. The first 2 accounts will be completed in this step. The second 2 accounts will be completed in the following step. So for short, we have AR subledger. So we have one for Brooke and one for Brady. So let's start at the top. Who was first? We had Brooke, and this is just the AR. So she was on June 1st. Posting reference is S1, and then since this is for the AR, what was that debit amount? It was for 1,210. So that's going to be 1,210, and that balance here is 1,210. And then next up for Brady, let's see where Brady was. Brady was on the 8th for 2,100. So 8th, posting reference S1 for 2,100. And that is a debit balance of 2,100. And I did forget to mention this S1 stands for sales journal and 1 stands for page 1. So let's go ahead and check our answer. Good job. Okay, and that's going to let us move on to the last 2, Israel and Mark. Let's see who is up next. Israel here on the 13th for 400. So June 13th, posting reference S1, and then that was for 400 and a debit balance of 400. All right, so for Mark now, we had him on the 28th for 870. So 28th, make sure we select the right date there. S1 for the posting reference, and that was again for 800. Just double checking. Oh, 870. Always double check your work. And then a balance of 870. So in this portion, we were only posting accounts receivable. And these were all debits because, again, AR increases with a what? A debit. Let's go ahead and check our answer. Well done. So now for requirement 3, the following selected 4-column accounts in the general ledger. So this is the general ledger that we're posting for. So we've got AR, and notice this is AR right here, and there's a semicolon and no previous balance. Otherwise, it shows up right after the account. So for merchandise inventory, you'll see there was a balance of 5,000 previously that we will have to input. So to continue this, we have general ledger has been opened for you. So we have that AR, merchandise inventory with a balance, sales revenue, cost of goods sold. Post the total of each column to the general ledger. Enter an opening balance for each account. For accounts with a 0 balance, so again, that's going to be all the ones here with a semicolon and no balance. That will be a 0. So enter a 0 on normal account side. If an input field is not used in the ledger, leave the field empty. Do not select any information and do not enter a 0. All right, so the first one here that does have a balance, we had a debit balance here in merchandise inventory of 5,000. And that balance is going on the debit side because, again, merchandise is an asset, and assets increase on the left-hand side with a debit. And then next up, if we want to go back to AR, AR did not have a balance, just that semicolon, no balance. So if it had no balance, that still falls on the debit side, as that is the normal plus side for the accounts receivable. And that's also, again, called the normal balance side. And then we're going to continue to work our way down here. So we have sales revenue right here. And again, sales revenue had no balance previously, and neither did cost of goods sold. So with sales revenue, the normal balance falls on the what side? The credit side. So there will be a 0 there. All right, now moving on to cost of goods sold. Again, no balance on that one previously. So that means we will be entering a 0 on the debit side. And why is that? Because cost of goods sold is an expense, and the normal balance side for expenses is on the debit side on the left-hand side there. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to post from the sales journal. And how are we going to do that? Notice up above here, we have this review the sales journal from requirement 1 link here. And we can click on that, and it opens up the sales journal for us. So we don't have to scroll up and down. However, if this was a test, it's not going to have this link because then it would give you the answers down here to the previous part. So on the test, if this problem is on the test, you're going to have to scroll up. So what we're going to do now is post the totals. So we have, first of all, our AR and sales revenue. The AR, that's going to be a debit of $45.80. So we have our AR here, and on what date was that? It was on June 30th, so we'll have to keep that in mind. So June 30th, our posting reference is still S1, and then it's going to be a debit of $45.80. And that's going to give us a debit balance of $45.80. And again, we're doing that as a debit because, for one, it says accounts receivable debit. That's what that DR stands for. And two, whenever we make a sale, that increases our AR with a debit on the left-hand side, since that is the normal plus side balance on that side, since that is the plus side for an asset account. So now next we need to post to our sales revenue with a credit of that same $45.80. So let's find our sales revenue, which is down below. Nice and handy there. So June 30th, same date, posting reference S1. However, this time it is a CR, a credit, because we are increasing our sales revenue, which increases on the side. So that is $45.80 credit. And then our credit balance, $45.80, since there was no previous balance. Now, next up, we need to post our cost of goods sold and our merchandise inventory. Start with the cost of goods sold. Our merchandise inventory is actually first up here. So that is decreasing because we're making a sale of merchandise inventory. Therefore, it is decreasing by 34.40. So again, we're posting this all on the same, it's going to be June 30th, and we are decreasing our cost of goods sold by, oh, not on the balance side, right here by 34.40. And then our balance after that is 1560, and that is on the debit side. And again, that's because our previous inventory balance was 5,000. We took out 34.40, and then we had 1560 left over. I'll scroll down to our cost of goods sold, which again is an expense. So on June 30th, posting reference S1, we want to debit for 34.40 to increase our expense for cost of goods sold there. And then the balance will be on the debit side as well, which is the normal balance side for cost of goods sold. And now we can minimize this and check our answer. Oh no, we forgot something, the posting reference here. So we have to input that still, and now we can check our answer. Excellent. So our next task here is enter the posting references in the sales journal. Enter X if the column total is not posted. Select a check mark to reflect posting to a subsidiary ledger. So for this part now we have to go back to our sales journal and enter our posting references to let everyone know that we've already posted all of these to AR and the totals to the proper accounts. So now remember, when we post the sales journal, anything to do with AR, I should say when we're posting any journal, anything to do with AR or accounts payable has to be posted at the end of that day. That way, if in case our customer friend here calls us and asks how much they owe, we can tell them, for example, Brooke, that if we waited till the end of the month to do that, we wouldn't be able to tell Brooke how much she owed us. So that's why we always have to post accounts receivable and accounts payable at the end of every day. So first we're going to have a look at Brooke Jenica. Was her balance here of accounts receivable for 12/10 posted? Scroll back up to the subledger for her, and that is right here. So AR subledger, and that is in fact posted as a debit for 12/10 to that AR subledger. So that is a check mark for us. Next up we have Brady for 2,100. Let's have a look at Brady's subledger. So Brady for 2,100, that looks great. That was posted. Then we have Israel for 400. So we'll go back up to his subledger. And that was posted to AR subledger here for 400. Great. Check mark there. Then we have Mark for 870. Let's double check. Our subledger for Mark, and that's here in the orange for 870. Perfect. All right, now we need to double check where we posted this 4582, and we posted that to AR and sales revenue. So let's take a look at those account numbers. So AR is 112 and sales revenue is 411. So we have 112, 411, and then for this one, this 3440 was posted to cost of goods sold and merchandise inventory. So we'll scroll back up and see those numbers. So 118 for merchandise inventory and 511 for cost of goods sold. It's going to be 118 or 511, 118 because the debit was to the cost of goods sold and the credit was to merchandise inventory. So that's why they are in that order. So these post references here and these post references here, remember to do these so that someone doesn't come back and post this 12/10 again to Brooke. And then also we do it down here so no one goes and posts this for 45/80 again, because remember 112 tells us that it's been posted to AR and the 411 is to the sales revenue. And again, we do this to let everyone else know that it has been posted. So don't post it again. All right, and we'll check our answer. Fantastic. And now for requirement 4. Balance the totals of the customer ending balances in the accounts receivable sub ledger against AR accounts receivable in the general ledger. For accounts with a 0 balance, enter a 0 in the appropriate field. Now you can view the AR subledger right here or scroll back up to requirement 2. I'm just going to scroll this way. So what they're asking for is in this AR subledger, it's showing all the amounts due for each individual. So all these totals must equal the same amount as in our AR account down below here. It's 4580. So then what we are being asked to do down here is to prove that those subledgers add up to that total AR balance. And here they want to know, is AR accounts receivable? What kind of balance is it? It is a debit balance, as AR is an asset of 4580. Let's just double check. 4580 and 4580 here in that general ledger. This is the amount they want to add to. All right, and I'm just going to pop this open because it's easier to look at this way. So for Brady Ferris, the balance is 2100. Then for Brooke, that balance is 1210. Then for Israel, the balance is 400. And for Mark Whitley, that balance is 870. And then they want to know our total accounts receivable, so these 4 added up. And then when we add those up, lucky us, it adds up to 4580. So our AR balance of 4580 matches the sub ledgers for AR. So the AR account in the general ledger is the control account for the AR subledger. So really, if you went to a ledger, you'd say you'd be able to tell your boss, well, customers owe us 4580. But if your boss asked us, well, how much does Brooke owe us, we'd go back up to the subledger, which I believe was in orange, and check Brooke's AR subledger here, and that is 1210. So that is the purpose of the subledgers, showing the individual amounts. So let's scroll back to the bottom and check our answer. Good job.